Right, so I have one more comparison that I want to sort of do with Dusk, and that is I want to compare it to Monarch. Right, see how they feel, see how cards feel, see how pulls feel. Because again, there is a feeling to opening packs. Right, if you see the same cards over and over again, right, their feel is diminished versus the say Majestics in Dusk. They feel great because by the time you cycle through them all, or find all the ones you want, there's a good amount of variation that it feels decent, right? Every time you find one, you want to look at it, you want to see which one you got. The commons, the tokens, no, right? There's not that sensation. You just want to get them out of the way because by the time you open, your first box, your first two boxes, you've seen them all, you found them all, and they just feel like out of place. That's what I want to say. They just feel like unnecessary inclusions. So we're going to open Dusk and we're going to open a first edition Monarch. Again, I don't put much stock in the unlimited version. I don't really want to collect the unlimited version because of, again, how overprinted it is. The only card I care for from that is, well, the FaB. Right. None of the legendaries really piqued my interest. Although, Phantasmal Footsteps has enticed me a few times to try and pick up a rainbow foil, just because of how it must look in rainbow foil. I haven't seen one in person, but again, there are a few cards where the rainbow foil variant looks better to me than the cold foil variant, because cold foil just doesn't do well with bright or light colored cards. Actually, no, not bright. Bright is fine. So, for instance, the Marvel Angel we got out of one of the last Dusk Till Dawn boxes, that was fine, right? Because the wings were a bright yellow-ish. But for the Radiant set, very much a miss versus my expectation in my head. Okay, so obviously Monarch is bigger packed. Interesting. They must have got shuffled up. So obviously they go 1-1-1, and I just grabbed 3 of the Shadow Side back to back. But we'll see what we can get. Again, we'll sort of discuss the feel, but for most intents purposes at this point, I've talked about Dusk Till Dawn a lot. We've done a lot of boxes. Granted, to you, probably doesn't seem like that yet, because these are probably going to come out before I put out the videos pertaining to me opening alongside other games. I think Pokemon's the big one where we do the most packs, and that will probably be a little bit later. Okay, so we got Shadow of Blasphemit. Right, as our first M. Where's the foil? Here we go. There's the foiling. That's another thing. The foiling has definitely come a long way. Right, they've kept to the tasteful nature, but it is definitely more apparent on these later sets. I think Dusk Till Dawn, it's the most apparent it's ever been. So that is, a nice upside. We see them continuing to advance, continuing to try trial and error, right? Different methods, different ideas, and see what sticks and see what works. So that's always a nice thing to see, right? Still in their early days, right? 10th set is really not that apparent. Herald, we don't want to put them aside. I want to see how many Heralds we get compared to the pull rates of Heralds in, obviously, Dusk Till Dawn. Do we get one in here? No, because they're only in the rare slots still. Foil too. We'll see how many foil ones we get, if we get any. I think the foil rarity will be comparable to the extended art rarity of Dusk Till Dawn. There we go, Soul Reaping. Yeah, so like it's hard for me to find the foiling unless I really go looking for it. And then if I can get it on the light, let me move the light a bit closer. A bit better. Still looks nice, but it's just not as apparent with, well, Dusk Till Dawn. Which, if I'm gonna make that case, let's open a pack or two and see. Where's the foil? Right. Okay, it's still tasteful. Still specific elements that are foiled. It still stands out, but it is far more apparent than the foiling. Right? Which is good. Instead of just, hanging up this idea and just going with blanket foiling, like the majority of card games, they're still keeping it tasteful, which is what I like to see. So let's tuck the foilings aside. We'll go back to Monarch. So it's nice to see. it's always nice to see these sort of evolutions, like the cold foil extended arts, and how more apparent. There's our cold foil. Ironhide plate. It is near the top of the box, so there is always a chance. And no more heralds. Keep forgetting to look. There are some common heralds too, which does mean those ones will be significantly more apparent. And in here, places the rainbow foil, right? So that is the big difference for Dusk Till Dawn. Dynasty, it didn't. So again, you couldn't calculate the odds, but now you can, which is an interesting thing. In the one set with CLA's cards, where you can work backwards and use that to calculate the number of packs printed, right, off of those 20 cards and their estimated pull rates. It's curious that they moved to that whole, you get a rainbow foil and you get a different foil, right? You get a rainbow foil and a premium foil. That's what they usually say, right? Instead of being one or the other, it's now both. Guaranteed a rainbow foil, and then you have the opportunity of a premium. Do they say? 15 cards randomized plus 1 token, approximately 1 card per booster. No, sorry, approximately booster ... ratio. 1 token, 1 equipment, 11 commons, 1 rare or higher, 1 premium foil. Okay, which is rainbow foil or cold foil. In Dusk Till Dawn, don't know if they print odds, because I don't think they ever do in Japanese. Right, we just have no specific card or rarity guaranteed. But on the page, right, it says, and they make that differentiation, which is nice. I think it's better because, again, to me, rainbow foils should be more expensive, because to get a full set is actually decently hard, but they're not reflected that way. Hexagore, am I pulling out Majestics? Probably not. Don't think I need them. I am. They go there. Probably got some heralds. Fine. I mean, from that alone, you know, they're obviously significantly more apparent. Yes, the better thing to do would be to compare them to rainbow foil variants. Nope. Pricing wise, I would honestly assume that the Dusk Till Dawn box to do better. Because again, this suffers from the whole buy case, old school mentality. Foiling on Belittle is a bit better. As in, a bit more apparent, I should say. They've always been great, but it's a bit more apparent. Non-paper, non-Japanese, so the difference in the crimping, right, the way it's been sealed, does feel weird. Right open is the foiling. That one's actually quite nice. Quite apparent. I'd still say if it did now, right, if they did a reprint of Monarch or anything like that, it'd be better. It would be better. If the technology has been greater, you know, they're a bit more comfortable with whatever they do to isolate areas, and I would assume they don't have it computerized algorithm. What am I trying to say? Right. They don't just plug it into a program and it highlights specific things. I mean, they might, right? You search for X tones in X card, and then you stick the foiling over it. But I'd still assume that, you know, for a lot of cases it is done by hand, or at least it's touched up by hand, which is, you know, something you can see and feel. Because again, there is a great desirability between the foiling, at least to me, that I would like a lot more people to pick up on. Because again, finding a playset of 4 rares in Flesh and Blood. Do you know how many packs you have to go through to do that? Yet, it's not really reflected in the pricing that well. Oh, it is for the initial block. The later set. Even like Dusk Till Dawn. For me to fill up a binder just with foils. Probably doable now that I've, you know, open 10 cases-ish. But still, I think they're underappreciated. Especially for the design, when you compare them to most other card games. Right, we've touched on how One Piece does it too. You know, they do selective foiling. It's hard to tell. Could it be more apparent? Well, here's the thing, right? If we just hold them under the same light, this really pops in its entirety. I don't know, it's brighter, if that makes sense. But I would assume it's just because the areas that they're focusing on is a bit more apparent. Well, actually, no, because at different angles, right, it still comes across more. I don't know. The foiling seems better to me. Am I right? Am I wrong? Let me know. The Ironhide plate, that's actually another interesting point. So, right, this grey, it's not as washed out as the Radiant set. The Radiant set really looks awful from X angle, because it is just way too dark. Whereas the Ironhide, right, yeah, it's dark, right, like that, it's pretty dark. I don't know. It's kind of a hard thing for them to adjust or change. Because again, cold foil is meant to be the big ticket item in Flesh and Blood, and to rewrite that would be really difficult amongst the player base. But for some cards, it's not going to work as well. Because again, you're sticking on grey tones over X card, and if that card is a white, it gets really washed out. If the cards are dark, it still gets really washed out. Whereas a rainbow foil is the opposite. It's easier to add a bunch of other colours, even sparingly, versus just going to black. Going to black, obviously, it's a lot easier to get to black than is. Or I should say, the amount that you add is heavier. So, for instance, if you were to go to Paint or any software, and you go set the opacity to 1, and you pick white, and you add to your image, right, it's going to be only a few clicks before it becomes real apparent. That's why rainbow foiling stands out, because it's brighter colours on darker backgrounds. But at the same time, if you were to go to black, opacity 1, take more clicks to get saturated, but then eventually it will just be dark, and then also... Ooh. One thing I hate, though, right? That interrupts my train of thought. If I'm meant to react, I want to react, I should say that. Okay, so we got a legendary. Now contestable. Which box does better? We did get 2 cold foils. Right, one at the top, one at the bottom. Nice to see. Vestige of Soul. Is it real? It's still played in Bolton, isn't it? What was I saying? Right, color tone. Okay, if you add black to black, eventually you just get black. Don't quote me on that. Seems like a very bad thing to quote me on. Out of context, I mean. Okay. Monarch is salvaged. Where do I open this box? Right, first, Foil Herald. Again, I'm going to say that the Foiled Heralds, actually, they're going to be slightly harder to pull than the Extended Arts, because of all the different foils you cycle through. But they are almost equivalent. You're going to find 1 to 2 a box, versus the Extended Art where you're going to find 1 to 2. Another M, I really need to sit through, because I've not been paying attention to the back slot for M's. There are 2 packs left. Yeah, we can find anything else. There we go. Always find FaBe, I suppose. Nope, no FaBe. Oh, but we did get M. Lucky last. No. Fine. No M. Cool. So, good box, because we got the Vestige of Soul. Again, white colours, so it works wonderfully. Dark colours, not so good. Alright, let's clean up and then we'll open the Dusk door. You know, it'd go pretty well with the Vestige of Soul. Light of Soul. Hint, hint, box. Alright, can help me out. But yeah, we didn't really discuss the feel of Monarch, right? But, again, it's parrots. Absolutely no interest whatsoever. Right, cursory glance, just thumbing through them. I've seen them all. I don't care for them anymore. Monarch is still a decent chunk of variation. The color palettes and just visually, right, you're gonna sift through, and you're gonna be a lot more interested and invested. One thing, one complaint: the cards that are similar are quite similar, right? Different artists, but still they have very, very similar imagery. Like, for instance, all of the Shadow Runeblade are these necromancer style cards, right? And they feel and look similar. Versus, again, Monarch, if we just thumb through some cards, look at that, straight away. See how different those two images are? Yes, it's still, you know, some sort of a ghastly image and then a Reaper, but the color palettes, again, the design, it's enough to catch your eye. Same with the color palettes or choices for the illusionist heroes. Yes, we have angels, but the color gradients, color palettes are significantly different. We stick to orange wings, white angels, you know, sky backgrounds, again with the same sort of color. So in that regard, it's a bit washed out in my mind when it comes to opening Dusk Till Dawn. Because again, the cards, that's just so similar as you thumb through them. Right, even sorting them. That one, good. But a lot of the light actions are this Knight, the color palette of Dorinthia, and then this orange/yellow glow in a weapon. Angels the same, you know, same color palettes. Like Celestial Resolve and this angel. We have a different image, but the color palette is the same. Again, thematically, wonderful. If they weren't so common, right, if they weren't 7 in a pack that I'm thumbing through, be fine. But because they are so apparent, because you cycle through them so quickly, the images being so similar in a lot of cards, again, you do, have contrast, you do have images that are different, but there are like 4 or 5, in fact, no, 3 or 4, I think that's a better estimate, where it's this ghost, where it's this undead ghoul, and just in a different pose. Slightly different, because again, different artists, but they have a very core structure to them. And because of that, the feel is a little bit lacking as you open packs. And trust me, I've opened a lot of Monarch. Again, I open a lot of sets. This isn't atypical. I open a lot of sets. It's the first time that I'm doing it, you know, with an audience. Right? It's usually just me and my partner, or me in my lonesome time, opening a bunch of products, drawing the cards, trying to get my gamblers high in, right? Finding cards. Shouldn't really joke about that. Family source spawn, right? That's why we make jokes to cover up. But yeah, I open a lot of product. It's hard to put into words this feel that I'm trying to talk about, but it is there. I'm sure those of you opening, right, you get it a little bit too. The feel of the commonality between cards, between images, right, that isn't quite as grand as some other sets. United We Stand foil, looks great. Love the glow on Bravo, right? Again, like, you look at the foiling, all together. The hand sticks out compared to everything else. Yet in a cold foil, it's blanket. Because again, there's only really one tonal thing to do with it, and it requires the back of the card, or the underlying image, to really carry the cold foiling. Like that. It's an all-dark card, but still, it's very apparent because of the hues. Right? Red and white, or red and... I don't know what... Red and bright, we'll say, because the red befoiling sticks out more than purple and bright. Like, how many Celestial Reprimands have we seen? A Fist of Light. How many times have we seen that just sifting through packs here? Not to mention, my hands get tired too. But there you go. So another, right, similar image. There is actually quite a bit of variation. But I guess it's the cards that do look very similar. They stick out more. And maybe it's just the wear down from opening so many. You're not foil, but you are an M. That's why. Right, we're about halfway. Still nothing to really contest with the Vestige. No cold foil yet either. M. And there is also those preconceived ideas, right? So Monarch, me finding the cold foil at the top, gets me hopeful. because I am hopeful that there's a cold full of plot because of the old standards. Dusk Till Dawn, you never know one pack to the next. Which feels better? I don't know. Right? As someone who is somewhat empirical when it comes to gambling, I guess having set odds, or odds I can think about, hum on and calculate, is a bit better. No, still nothing. It packs up. It's like 5 or something. Come on, where are you? It's going to be in my first non-cold war box. There are 6 packs left. Nothing. Might just be. It's interesting. Then we can count the M's and see, because sometimes, right, the old feel, again, we're talking about feels. Ah, that is what we like to see, glaring through. My first Marvel Angel from a Japanese box. Only took 10-ish cases. Is the prettiest one from my perspective. Again, this angle, right? So dark. Wings look great. Everything else looks great. In the right light, it looks great. But from certain angles, it's just way too dark. You know, it's almost like they need to come up with a opposite to this metallic foiling for those set spots. Something to emphasize it and make it brighter. I mean, yeah, obviously they can't mix the two foiling. It's an overlay. I'm sure there's something that they could do. Even if it was a bit more fine in the armor. Right, so for instance, on this shoulder pad, the gold looks great. But then you still get the dark areas. So if on the gauntlet, right, it was just selective edging, again, it'd be really, really personal, no, hard work, manual, that's what I'm trying to say, to do that. But it would look great. Okay. Does an Archangel beat a Vestige? Honestly, I don't know. You'd have to tell me. I don't do prices still after. I'll probably do prices for this one. Or I'll probably do prices for big cards. Maybe. I don't know, I'm pretty lazy. Maybe when we actually just crack into a case, we'll do that. Anything else to end it out? Another Herald. Last pack. And we get just a chains. Still, I'm happy. Found a Archangel. That's 2 now. 2 out of 8. Good to see. Avalon versus the Vestige of Souls. Which one? Let me know. I'll give you that job rather than me give up the prices. This side, which is why I sort of avoided looking at it. No. Just no. This is not deserving of the reverse side. I'm sorry, Eric Klug. It's not good. It's good art. It just does not match. Right? I have no issue whatsoever with this style of art. It just has its own place. Right? That to that. Just is a miss to me. I don't know, what do you think? Are you fine with this art? There is 2 or 3 cards in Dusk Till Dawn that I really dislike. Again, not because the art is bad, but because they don't, to me, match with the rest of the set. These 1 gradient-ish boxes, they have a gradient to them. They do, it's very slight. And I know there's detailing on the leaves and the skulls, the broken sword, the hands, obviously, but I think the background is a miss. I think just that little bit extra detail would bring it up to par with the rest of the set. We're talking about themes, right? So the cards, there's a lot that overlap and match, and that's fine. Themes feel good. It's just the issue of how many cards you go through. In this case, it sticks out like a sore thumb compared to all the other cards, compared to the stylization choices. To me, at least. So, I will forever just look at this side. I'll stick it in my binder this side, and I shall never speak of the other one. Anyway, hope you enjoyed. See ya.